Imagine this, a quiet afternoon, a busy street corner, and a stranded stranger sitting next to a broken bike. Out of nowhere, a man steps forward, a man whose face you'll instantly recognize but can't believe is standing there. He kneels beside the bike, examining the tangled chain and bent wheel, his expression calm and focused. As onlookers stop in disbelief, one question races through their minds: why on earth is Keanu Reeves, yes, that Keanu Reeves, fixing a random stranger's broken bike? But wait, it gets even more unbelievable. Because what happens next will not only leave you speechless, but it'll completely change the way you think about kindness, fame, and the power of a simple twist of fate. Why did Keanu stop? What's the story behind this moment? And what's the heartwarming twist that left everyone around him in tears? You won't want to miss this. This is not just a story about a broken bike, it's about something far bigger. Something that will stay with you long after this video ends. So stay right here, because what you're about to hear will absolutely blow your mind. Ready? Let's begin. It all started on a sunny afternoon in a quiet neighborhood in Los Angeles. The kind of day where nothing out of the ordinary seemed likely to happen. A young man named Sam was on his way home from work, navigating the winding streets on his old bike. He loved that bike. It wasn't fancy, but it had been with him through thick and thin, a trusty companion in the chaos of city life. But as fate would have it, Sam's luck ran out that day. As he turned a corner, the chain slipped off, and the back wheel wobbled dangerously before coming to a grinding halt. Sam pulled over, frustrated, kneeling beside the bike to inspect the damage. The chain was twisted, the wheel bent, and he didn't have the tools or the know-how to fix it on the spot. Cars sped past him, and pedestrians barely glanced his way. It was the kind of moment where you feel utterly invisible, stuck in the middle of your own bad day while the world just keeps moving. Sam sighed, pulling out his phone to call for help, but his battery was dead. That's when it happened. A sleek black motorcycle pulled up a few feet away. The rider removed his helmet, shaking loose a mop of unmistakable dark hair. At first, Sam didn't pay much attention, he was too wrapped up in his own frustration. But when the man approached, Sam looked up, and his jaw dropped. It was him. Keanu Reeves. Sam blinked, certain his eyes were playing tricks on him. What was Keanu Reeves doing here? Was this some kind of prank? But Keanu didn't wait for Sam to figure it out. He smiled, a small, kind smile, and crouched beside the bike, tilting his head as he examined the damage. Looks like a tough break, Keanu said casually, his voice calm and unhurried. Sam stammered, unsure of how to respond. Why yeah. I don't know what happened. I think the chain's messed up, and the wheel. Keanu nodded, already rolling up his sleeves. Mind if I take a look? Sam could only nod, his brain still catching up to the fact that John Wick, was sitting on the sidewalk with him, tinkering with his busted bike. As Keanu worked, a small crowd began to gather. People whispered to each other, snapping photos and recording videos. But Keanu seemed oblivious to the attention. His focus was entirely on the bike, his hands moving with surprising precision and care. What are you doing? Sam finally asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Keanu looked up, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Fixing your bike, he said simply. You've got places to be, right? Sam laughed nervously. Yeah, but you're Keanu Reeves. Why are you doing this? Keanu shrugged, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Because I can. Sometimes, it's the small things that matter the most. Those words hung in the air, simple yet profound. And for the first time, Sam noticed something different about Keanu, not just the calmness, but a genuine humility that seemed almost out of place for someone so famous. As Keanu continued to work, the crowd grew larger. People were now openly calling his name, waving, and asking for selfies. But Keanu didn't stop. He waved back occasionally, flashing his signature smile, but his hands stayed on the bike, his focus unwavering. Then, as if the universe couldn't resist adding a little more drama, a police car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, clearly curious about the commotion. One of them approached, eyebrows raised. Everything okay here? The officer asked. Keanu glanced up, grinning. Just fixing a bike. The officer froze for a moment, his professional demeanor slipping as recognition dawned. "Wait, are you?" Keanu chuckled softly. "Yeah." The officer nodded, clearly at a loss for words, before stepping back to give him space. But this wasn't just a random act of kindness. There was something deeper going on, something that wouldn't become clear until later. As Keanu tightened the last bolt and adjusted the wheel, he stood up, brushing off his hands. "There you go," he said, stepping back to admire his work. Sam tested the bike, riding it a few feet down the sidewalk. It was perfect, better than before. He turned back, a mix of gratitude and awe on his face. I don't know how to thank you," he said. Keanu waved it off. "No need. Just pay it forward someday." But as Keanu reached for his helmet, about to leave, something unexpected happened. A little girl stepped out of the crowd, holding a small, tattered notebook. She tugged on Keanu's jacket, her big eyes filled with hesitation. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Can you sign this for me?" Keanu knelt down, his expression softening. "Of course," he said, taking the notebook. But as he opened it to sign, he froze. His eyes scanned the page, his smile fading for just a moment. What was in that notebook? And why did it seem to strike such a chord with Keanu? Keanu stared at the notebook for what felt like an eternity. The crowd, still buzzing with excitement, began to quiet down as they noticed the change in his demeanor. Sam, still holding onto his bike, took a step closer, trying to see what had caught Keanu's attention. The notebook wasn't just any notebook. Its pages were filled with messy handwriting, drawings, and what appeared to be a list of names and dates. At the bottom of the page, circled in bold, uneven letters, were the words, "Thank you for reminding us that kindness matters." Keanu's lips curved into a soft, almost bittersweet smile as he looked up at the little girl. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice gentle but filled with curiosity. The girl shifted nervously, glancing at her mother, who stood nearby. "It was my brother's," she said quietly. "He used to write in it all the time." Keanu's gaze softened even further. "What happened to him?" The girl hesitated, and her mother stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "He passed away last year," the mother said, her voice trembling. He was a huge fan of yours. He always said you were his hero, not just because of your movies, but because of how kind you are to people." Keanu's expression shifted, a mix of sorrow and gratitude. He knelt down to the girl's level, holding the notebook carefully, almost reverently. "What was his name?" he asked. "Oliver," the girl replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu nodded, flipping through the pages of the notebook. It was filled with Oliver's thoughts, dreams, and little sketches of movie scenes. Some were from Keanu's iconic roles, Neo, John Wick, even Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But there were also notes about how Oliver wanted to be kind like Keanu, how he wanted to help people, even strangers, whenever he could. One note caught Keanu's eye. It read, "One day, I'll meet Keanu Reeves and tell him how much he's inspired me. And I'll remind him that his kindness changed my life." Keanu closed the notebook, his hands steady but his eyes betraying a flicker of emotion. He looked at the girl and said softly, "Oliver sounds like he was an incredible person." The girl nodded, her eyes welling up. "He was. He always helped people, even when he didn't feel good." For a moment, the bustling street seemed to fade away. Keanu handed the notebook back to the girl, his voice steady but filled with a quiet determination. "Oliver was right," he said. "Kindness does matter. And he's still inspiring people, like you, and now me." The girl smiled, clutching the notebook tightly to her chest. But the story wasn't over yet. As Keanu stood up, ready to leave, Sam called out, "Wait." Keanu turned, and Sam pointed to the girl and her mother. "I don't think this is just a coincidence. I mean, what are the odds that you'd stop here, today, of all places?" Keanu tilted his head, considering Sam's words. He looked back at the little girl and her mother, then at the crowd that had gathered. There was something almost surreal about the moment, as if the universe had aligned just to bring them all together. The mother stepped forward, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and emotion. "You've done more for us than you realize," she said. Oliver always believed that small acts of kindness could change the world. Seeing you here, helping a stranger, proves he was right. Keanu paused, his expression thoughtful. Maybe, he said quietly, Oliver had a hand in this. The crowd murmured, and for a moment, it felt like everyone was connected by the weight of those words. Then, with a final wave, Keanu put on his helmet and got back on his motorcycle. But before he rode off, he turned to Sam and said, "Remember what I told you, pay it forward." Sam nodded, the words sinking deep into his heart. As Keanu drove away, the crowd slowly dispersed, but the feeling lingered, the sense that something extraordinary had just happened. Sam looked at the girl and her mother, who were still standing there. He smiled and said, "Your brother was right. Kindness really does matter." The little girl nodded, her grip on the notebook tightening. "I think he'd be happy today," she said. And in that moment, it was clear that this wasn't just a story about a famous actor helping a stranger. It was about something far bigger, about how one small act of kindness can ripple outward, touching lives in ways we can't even imagine. As the roar of Keanu's motorcycle faded into the distance, the crowd slowly dispersed, but Sam remained rooted in place, replaying everything that had just unfolded. The weight of Keanu's words, "Pay it forward," lingered in his mind like an unshakable echo. The little girl and her mother began walking away, but Sam called after them. "Wait!" They turned around, surprised. Sam approached them with a sheepish smile. "I don't know what brought us all together today, but I think it was for a reason." He glanced at the girl. "Your brother, Oliver, sounds like someone I would have really liked to meet. I want to do something in his honor." The mother looked at Sam, curiosity in her eyes. "What do you mean?" Sam hesitated for a moment, but then the words tumbled out. "This bike. Keanu fixed it for me. And I'm grateful, more than I can even explain. But maybe it's not meant to stay with me." He turned to the girl. "Would you like it? For Oliver?" The girl's eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked at her mother as if seeking permission. The mother knelt down, holding her daughter's hand, and said softly, "That's up to you, sweetheart." The girl nodded, a small but radiant smile spreading across her face. "I think Oliver would like that." Sam grinned, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. "Then it's yours." Meanwhile, as Keanu rode through the city streets, the events of the afternoon played over in his mind. The notebook, the little girl, her brother's words, it was as though fate had orchestrated the encounter. He pulled over at a quiet spot overlooking the city skyline and took off his helmet. Sitting there on his bike, he thought about Oliver's message, "Kindness matters." Keanu had always believed in small, meaningful gestures, but this moment felt different. It was a reminder, a reaffirmation, that even the simplest act of compassion could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. He pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app. After a moment of thought, he typed, "Small acts of kindness can change the world. Don't wait for the right moment, just do it." Smiling faintly, he hit save and got back on his bike. The world was full of chaos, but every now and then, moments like this reminded him, and everyone else, that there was still good out there. Back at the bike shop, Sam watched as the little girl climbed onto her new bike, her mother steadying her. For the first time in a long while, Sam felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. The girl looked up at him, her voice filled with hope. "Thank you, Sam." He nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "No, thank you. You and Oliver reminded me what really matters." As they rode off, Sam turned back to his shop, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He decided then and there to start something new, maybe a community initiative where kids could get bikes or repairs for free, in honor of Oliver. The story of Keanu Reeves fixing a stranger's bike isn't just about the act itself. It's about the incredible ripple effect that a single act of kindness can create. Now, here's where you come in. Take a moment to think, what's one small act of kindness you can do today? It doesn't have to be grand or life-changing. Sometimes, the smallest gestures mean the most. Tell us in the comments, what's one act of kindness you've experienced or given? How did it change you or someone else? And if this story moved you, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration today. Let's keep Oliver's message alive, because kindness truly does matter. Thank you for watching, and remember, the smallest actions can create the biggest waves.